What time it is?
She said she gave her glass.
Good morning. The Finance Committee meeting will be adjourned, and the time is 10:38 a.m., a little bit of a delay, I apologize. And we have in attendance remotely my colleague, Alderwoman Finlayson. Thank you for being here. And
morning.
Alderwoman O'Neill. At this time, I'll accept a motion to approve the agenda. I believe it's unchanged.
Motion to approve the agenda is written.
Second.
Alderwoman Finlayson, can you second?
She seconded.
Oh, she did.
She did.
Okay.
Julian's fixing us.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, we'll just continue then.
Yes.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay. For the record, at this time, I'll accept a motion to approve the meeting minutes of July 19th, 2023.
Motion to approve FC 71923.
Second.
She second.
Oh, yes, she seconded.
Thank you.
Guys,
Alderwoman
can't hear me?
Finlayson. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
She said
Aye.
Aye.
Kaylin, please let
Okay,
Julian
today
know.
we have supplemental appropriations to approve. Some are new and some are to reconcile the budget. The first one is SA 3-24, which is under the leadership of the Department of Transportation, and we have we're honored to have Mayor Gavin Buckley here to speak to it if you wish, or both of you to come up and chat about the success of the electric carts in Eastport and on Maryland Avenue, so the public can see that we are making an effort here to support small businesses. Who will speak first?
Well, I missed you guys. It's been a while. Thank you. Mayor Gavin Buckley, Director of Transportation, Marcus Moore. We're just here to talk about the expansion of the 10-minute trolley. While we were under construction for the Hillman Garage, we had to think of alternative mobility options to get people to 2 parking assets. We prototyped, or we piloted an idea that got people between 3 parking assets, the Gott's Garage, the State Garage, and the St. John's Garage, which is the State Garage, and the County Garage, Whitmore Garage, and then on a route that moved to Maryland Ave, shopping precinct, aligned with Main Street so people could cut through from State Circle through to Main Street. And we activated that for about 6 months, 12 months, I think, during the construction of the project. When the garage was completed, we always had planned to move the asset to pilot an idea in Eastport. And the idea in Eastport is to connect the shopping precinct of 4th Street, or the restaurant row of 4th Street, and other assets on the peninsula in Eastport, all the way through to the shopping centre and beyond the shopping centre. Around the shopping centre, on the way to the shopping centre, there is an incredible amount of parking, right? Why the peninsula gets so busy is because everybody just drives onto the peninsula and tries to find parking there. So we're trying an idea here that gets people moved off the peninsula towards the shopping centre in an electric fashion. This is part of a larger plan, the AMP plan, the Annapolis Alternative Mobility Plan, the idea of getting people out of their cars as soon as possible, out of their fossil fuel burning cars generally, into electric modes of transport, whether that be the electric circulator, we think is going to be here early next year, also onto the electric ferry, which we are working on design for now, electric scooters, electric bikes. We see the 5th Street block to the water as a great opportunity for us to make a transportation hub. And then and this 10-minute trolley will circulate past that transportation hub, and then you'll have other options. You could potentially park there also, or you could ride your bike there and ride onto a ferry. You know, lots of different options that are going to be available at that Fifth Street transportation hub. I'll let Marcus sort of talk about the specifics of the plan. You should have in front of you a map of the route that Marcus has worked out. Now, these routes are flexible, but this is what we see. The route will pilot for. Okay.
Okay, sure thing.
Yeah. Do you have a handout for those guys?
Is it a
Another
handout?
one. I don't think I have another one, but I can give this to them.
Yeah. And what we also don't have is sort of the duration, what this,
Talk about that as well.
Yep.
what this will include as far as the duration,
Okay.
Director Moore.
What I can do is start while the copies are being made. To go back about the other route that we were running January through, well, still running now, just Saturday and Sundays. It took a while to, with any kind of pilot, to branch off and people to know it's there and use it. Unbeknownst to us, we carried about 1,200 people in about 6 months. So there were some days, we only like 5 or 6, 8 to 10. Then we got up to 35. So it took a few months to do this. Remember, these are fair weather vehicles that have no AC or heat. And then if it's, flooding like some of the areas that we have, or if it's just too cold, we can't actually operate. So what we've done is mirrored what we did there, which was Calvert Street to West Street, around Church Circle, School Street, State Circle, Maryland Avenue, Prince George's Street, College Avenue, St. John's, and around. That was about 1.3 miles. It took 10 minutes, and that was connecting the Maryland Avenue Business District, State Circle, so a lot of those restaurants and businesses there. We want to duplicate those efforts. But remember, as we mentioned, when we got to March and April, we were getting 35, 40 people in a day. But it took time. So this pilot that Mayor Buckley is speaking of is Eastport. So kind of the same concept of about 1.3 miles, a 10-minute trolley. When the maps come, I'll start explaining to you there. When the maps come, you'll be able to see. If we start at Eastport Shopping Center on Americana Drive, we make that right onto Chesapeake Avenue. Continue down Chesapeake, make a right onto 5th Street. 5th Street will dead into Chester Avenue. We make a left onto Chester, a left onto 4th, go all the way down to Severn. So we make a left onto Severn, and we have that, the only parking garage in Eastport at the marina. So we're covering a lot of businesses there. So we could continue down Severn Avenue, and we go all the way down to Washington Street. Washington Avenue, I believe it says. Washington will take us back into Bay Ridge Avenue, and we'll continue down to Bay Ridge to Monroe, and we'll end or begin right there on Monroe Street, which I believe is called, is it the Luke's Episcopal Church, that parking lot there, or the Eastport Shopping Center. We go behind the shopping center, Norman Drive, and continue that loop back around. So we found 1.3 miles. Did you want to see any of that? To make that loop, and it's going to take a couple months to build it, to have it build it and they will come kind of thing. So what you see in front of you, the map that's outlined in red, is the route I just described with the left-right turns. So as Mayor Buckley mentioned, what we're trying to do is connect a lot of these areas where parking is at a premium. And if we can use the Annapolis Marina as a parking lot, and we can take them all throughout, and we're connecting on Chester Avenue, the museums and the other yacht clubs that are there. I think I may have noted, maybe I didn't put them on here.
Just a little timeout. Is there any way that we could have my colleague Alderwoman Finlayson see this map?
I just emailed it to her.
Oh,
I
well,
can-
there you go.
I can
You have
see it.
Alderwoman Finlayson.
Can you hear me?
She's on mute.
She's on mute. Okay. Can you raise your hand, yes, that you have it?
I have it.
She has
Can
it.
you hear me?
Okay. I'm sorry to interrupt.
No problem.
Okay, cool.
We're ready to entertain questions because obviously this, there's a cost associated with it. So what we've done with the cost is the cost to operate it by a driver. And so what we did was looked at selected weekends through the rest of this year, calendar year, and then for the rest of the fiscal year of FY24, And we've come up with that cost. And obviously, some of them, we just didn't have the crystal ball to look into to see those heavy rain days, or if it's below 36 degrees kind of thing. So we came up with a cost of about $14,000 to operate for the rest of this fiscal year per route. If you're so inclined, we suggest that we still run the one on Maryland Avenue as well, and that would run the same thing Saturday and Sunday, approximately 11 a.m. to 6 p.m. 30 minutes, the beginning and the end for the driver. So it's an 8-hour day, 16 hours a week. So for both carts, it'll be 32 hours. So what you have there is a cost estimate. If we do the remaining days in September, then of course October, November. Not a whole lot we can probably do in January, February, March. Weather permitting, it will be really good for us of those, what is it called, First Thursdays? Not First Thursday. Midnight Madness on Thursdays, the first 3 Thursdays in December, and possibly even the day after Thanksgiving, the big shopping day. Ready to answer any questions that you might have as far as cost, as far as route, and how we came up with these figures.
And I'm just going to add in something here that there are funding opportunities for this. So we're currently exploring, like you see on the New York taxis, when you see those advertising things on top of the taxis, we could probably get an advertiser to take a banner there on that, and I think that would close to cover a cost, I'm sure. We could also, when we talk about what we're going to do about the parking lots, that's still in play for us, whether there's some contribution made by restaurants when they make their parking lots into cafes. So I think, this is an idea that we're going to prototype here, but with the mind that we can get it financed and then grow it if we need to. So.
Just with your indulgence, one question I have that's just immediate is, does this cost include the marketing of it? People don't know about this. How will they know about this?
I mean, the marketing, I think, is when it drives, that's how it picked up popularity in Maryland Ave.
Okay.
People realize that, and it has a big free sign on it.
Okay.
Free sign on the front, free sign on the back.
Okay.
And I think people started to get used to it and started to make it part of their routine, but we don't have any specific idea on marketing outside of that.
I'm thinking of
and you can
stop.
flag it down anywhere, unlike the circulator where you have to be at the stop when it hits you, or the bus that comes from the stadium, you have to be at one of the specific stops there. This one you can flag anywhere on the route. When it's full, it's full. So it has 5 people in it. You have to wait another 10 minutes,
Yep.
What I'm getting at is, in the budget, I think we had approved an amendment for a lot of money for signage. I know it was related to construction and the inconvenience of construction. I just didn't know if that bucket of money was something that we could apply to something like this.
One of the things that we did do with internal marketing, our PIO, with our Facebook pages, our Instagram pages, and on our website, word of mouth there getting out that, this is there. With our CCTV, we've done some videos that have been posted that were, so it's been the free marketing that we're able to do within ourselves. And it'll be really neat if local media like Capital Gazette was able to pick up on something like this and that kind of media. And then the signs that whatever we can do that may be left over for the garage wayfinding sign monies that we had there.
Okay. Colleagues?
I don't have any questions.
Alderman Finlayson, I think we can hear you now.
Thank you. Trying to figure out where you can see my hand and where you can't.
We can't yet.
Can you hear me? I guess not.
No, we can't hear you.
You can't hear her? Can you press, are you pressing all the right buttons, Sheila?
I don't think it's on my end.
Yeah, she's frozen too.
My microphone.
Okay, can you email, if you hear
I-
me, raise your hand, and
I
can you
can
email your questions?
I can give Caitlin my question.
She said she's about to send me the question.
Okay, or to Kaylin, okay.
My question has to do with the route in Eastport,
The route.
on Fifth Street, Chester Avenue. Mr. Moore, have you actually ridden that
You
route
can,
with the vehicles? I'm sorry, that's a lot, Caitlin.
it is her ward, so her part of her ward.
Did you use your phone?
Part of it? Any of it? None of it. It's
Director
all.
Moore, have you ridden, like, have you rode that route with the vehicles?
Oh, I'm sure.
Oh, yeah. We
I've gone on those
Bill-
trips.
Bill, the head of the ECA, my friend Bill Wright-Card, and I and Old Marnette proofed the route, and then we listened to some potential other options. But I got a sense that they're very supportive of the idea, happy that we're
you're right.
trying something out new in Eastport. And part of the route actually goes past Bill Wright-Card's house.
I'm sure he doesn't want a sign there.
But my question was about the impact on the residents who live on Fifth and Chester particularly.
For the public, we're getting her through.
What are the impacts of the residents who live on where?
Who live on both
Yes.
and Chester
And
Avenue.
Chester. Where does Mr. Reichard live?
So he lives on Bay Ridge Avenue, and so, but I think the idea is it takes cars off the peninsula, so the main ground zero, I think, for traffic is Chesapeake and Fifth, right? Chesapeake and Fourth, Chesapeake and Fifth. So the idea would be it stops cars. Less cars will come onto the peninsula if people use it potentially, you know. But we all have pretty positive feedback. So we couldn't quite get it over to the church, your church, Sheila, but we could try it on Sunday if you want us to.
Well, I think you absolutely should. But I am,
You absolutely should.
Okay.
but I am
She's
really,
on the second.
On second.
Yeah.
can I finish my question? I
It'd
know
be
you
great to
can.
have a stat like we
Still
do.
has a question.
Oh, sorry.
My concern is for the residents who live on Fifth Street and Chester Avenues.
Her concern is for the residents who live on Fifth Street and Chester Avenue.
Are we covering it?
Chester.
Yeah, I get it, yeah.
Her concern is for the residents who live on Fifth and Chester.
And the concern is, are we covering it or
dead
because it's
end?
going down that way?
The impact on
Perhaps
their
the end issue?
The
No.
impact on
Maybe I
On
went too
their
fast with the
parking
route.
on their
Should I
Yes.
describe it again?
Yes.
Okay, let's start back at Americana Drive, and we make that right from Americana onto Chesapeake. We continue down Chesapeake to Fifth Street. We make a right on Fifth Street, and we dead in at Chester. So we make a left onto Chester to Fourth. Make a left on Fourth.
And that's the portion I'm asking about. Fifth Street to Chester. That's the portion I'm asking about. Fifth Street to Chester and the impact on those residents and their parking.
Fifth Street and Chester, the impact that they're parking for the residents. That's what she's asking about.
Oh.
How does it impact their the residents in the
It
parking?
wouldn't. This is just the electric cart. So regular cars are still coming by. We'll be making this transition Saturday and Sunday, once every 12 minutes or so. So it won't take away parking for residents or anybody else. We hope to decrease transient parkers that are coming to visit, but we're not restricting or removing any RPPs, residential parking permits, or people that actually live in that area. We're not taking that away.
So the idea is to encourage the
The
residents
idea is to encourage the residents
to use this mode
To use
of
the-
transportation.
This
or to encourage
Any-
people
anybody.
to park,
Anybody. Mhm.
or to encourage
No, it's to encourage
visitors
anybody to use it.
Right.
To-
It's free.
no, to encourage visitors to park in the community
But
and
they will be coming through to use the services of that community. Whether it's the Boathouse Grill on Severn and Fourth, or what's the other one on Chesapeake and Fourth? The restaurants and, I'm sorry? Yes. So the businesses along that corridor, or even if as we go down Fourth, going to Second, just 2 blocks over, where you got more of the marina, you can boat up to that restaurant. What is the name of that restaurant on Second?
The coffee shop.
The coffee shop, yeah. We're connecting more.
Leewood Market.
Leewood Market, we're connecting more.
That's on Second, yeah.
Okay.
the rest of my question, and my main question is it to encourage visitors to park in the community and get the vehicle? Or
Is it encouraged for the visitors to park in the community
and then get on the vehicle?
Not our hope.
and then get on the vehicle?
Or is the target the residents who live in Eastport?
Or is it to target the residents who live in Eastport?
We'd like them to use the public parking facility that's on Severn Avenue. Because that's the only public parking in Eastport, and that way you can get all the way down to Chester Avenue without parking on Severn, have to walk those 5 or 6 blocks.
So it is for the visitors.
It is for the visitors or anyone, but we're hoping that it can increase the usage of people coming to visit, and then having a place to park and still getting down. Hopefully we don't get those visitors parking on Chester, parking on 5th or 4th, to use those businesses on that side of town.
Yeah, I don't know if we're making that clear, that the objective here is to decrease the burden on the existing parking spaces that are typically used for the residents.
That is true.
So we have the potential to take the road behind the shopping centre, right, and encourage people to park back there, right? If the shopping centre, doesn't want to work with us on the new shopping centre, or there's some transportation hub there over by the church, but we have the potential to use the church parking, potentially. We have the potential to use the whole road, both sides of the road, at the back of the shopping centre, and make it just for people to park so they don't drive onto the peninsula. So the goal is to try to get people out of their car as soon as possible, right? And then the little loop that it does around Eastport is around 5th Street and Chester. That's more to get people around to those assets. We believe people are going to be out of their cars well before they get to those points. So it's not trying to drive traffic to Chester or 4th Street or 5th Street. It's really just trying to get people onto some mobility before they get past 6th Street. That's the goal. Right?
What's the capacity of that garage?
That I don't know. I have information back in the office. I can look it up and make sure I email that to you today on what that is. But it is a public parking. I forgot the name of it. It's not one of the city assets, but it is public parking.
City Marina parking, you mean?
Yeah, yes.
So the important question there is, what is not only the capacity, but what is its existing use, so that we know that it's available for these visitors to use, right?
Yes.
Alderwoman O'Neill has a question.
Thank you. I know that the drawbridge creates a little bit of a hurdle, but is there any thought to running a shuttle from Hillman, even if it's just across the bridge, to that 5th Street area? A larger shuttle, like one of the purple magenta shuttles. That would seem like, if we did so much work in directing people to different garages while this was under construction, it would seem almost like a good idea perhaps to run a shuttle from here to there, because the electric mobility are carrying 5 passengers. Is that correct?
Yes.
at a time?
Yeah. To answer that, we do have two services that do that now. It's the green route that comes right by here, and it'll go to Eastport. So as it comes down Duke of Gloucester, it makes a left onto St. Mary Street and makes a right onto Compromise, going across Spa Creek. And there is a stop right across from Eastport Elementary. And as you get onto Chesapeake, it's right beside the Royal Farms. And then it goes right to Norman Drive and comes back out that way. So that's Monday through Saturday. And then we have the Purple in the evenings and Sundays and holidays that does the same route. So we already have an asset that does service that at a cost. That's the $2 or $1 reduced rate for certain classes. But that one is in operation today.
Is that every hour, every half an hour?
Every 30 minutes on the green. The Purple in the evening after 7 o'clock, and all day on Sunday is just a little bit longer, every probably hour.
I think that needs more, people don't know that, do they?
Yeah, people don't, I mean, I didn't know that there was a way to get across, and I think that maybe some of our marketing should be targeted at that. If what we're really trying to do is keep the cars off, I don't know why it's echoing, but if we're really trying to keep the cars off the peninsula, shooting them here and having a direct access point for them to get there, even if it is every 30 minutes.
With this garage now, even with the older one, now with this having larger capacity, that is a very good option. And something needs to be looked into to market it better. So parking here and getting to Eastport, something of that nature. I
think that's a good idea. So we could market options to get to Eastport. You know, it could be the green bus, the purple bus, the ferry, you know, something like that, but market it outside the new garage. So that's a good idea, because I knew a bus went by. I didn't really know where it went, you know, and I didn't know what days it went on. So, but also the idea is, you know, how do you get our population onto buses? You know, that how do you popularize that? And that's something we all have to work on, right? You know,
and that's a good thing what we're mentioning here. So once I get you there, how do I get around? And that's with the mayor's plan here with the electric vehicle. So the stops, as we made mention, right at the corner of Conduit and Duke of Gloucester is a stop, and at the corner of St. Mary's and Compromise, there's a stop. And once we get you on the peninsula, now we can get you around the peninsula on these two selected days. So that's some marketing that you brought up that we may need to.
To amend to that, you know, from the study, the pilot study that we did, I'm not sure of the percentage, but there was a substantial amount of percentage of patrons that still parked on Eastport streets to attend, you know, Forward Brewing, for example, and that, you know, that street that will become, you know, a little bit more popular because of Adam's Ribs. And so I think what my colleague is suggesting is that we need to relieve, this could be a win-win in a sense if we could relieve that and get some messaging out there that there's another way to get to those establishments without burdening the streets. And I'm sure that's a concern of my colleague Alderman Arnett as well, especially with the new establishment opening, Adam's Ribs. Correct?
Agreed, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's quite a bit that we can do internally to get that message out of something that's already been in operation, and then now we have part 2 of this mobility plan to get you around these other options. So, you know, the marina on parking on Severn is not the only answer, but if you got there and that's where you want to be, closer. But we have these assets right here, which is the Hillman Garage. You can park here and then get over to that side, and you can get around without having to strain the parking on the peninsula with your own personal vehicles. So we do need to get a message out to make this really work as best it can.
We never really thought about it that way, have we? You know, coming from that direction.
Yeah.
and I can make this joke because I'm a sailor, or I sailed here. But sailors are cheap. They probably don't want to pay for parking.
Yeah. Alderwoman Finlayson, do you have any questions?
I think my question was answered. Thank you.
Question was answered.
Okay, cool. All right, on that note, I'll accept a motion for a favorable recommendation for this supplemental appropriation.
I move
Move
to
approval.
give a favorable recommendation for SA 324.
Second,
She moved? Oh, second that.
She seconded.
She's got the hang of it.
Your mic is on.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 So
She said,
can we coordinate for the finance committee to go on a ride of it? Can we do that?
I'd love to have it.
So the four of us could go on a ride and have some, maybe at our next council thing, we could go to we could go to either Eastport Kitchen or Bread and Butter or something and then just do the loop. Yep, you up for that idea?
Yes,
That'd be
please.
fun.
So I'll coordinate that
Love to have
between
it.
the five of us. Yeah.
Synchronize our watches to make sure it's under 10 minutes, is it?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much. Thank
Hey,
you.
thanks a lot. Okay. So next on the agenda, thank you so much for being here, Mayor Buckley. The next is SA 4-24, which is an open space local grant. I'm not sure who is here to speak to that. I know that Director Dickinson will be here for this. We do have some questions on this, so we appreciate you coming.
So this is primarily a logistical exercise. 2 or 3 years ago, the Maritime Museum received a grant through the state, and the city had to sign on as a supporter of that effort. And in that agreement, the city was actually the grantee. And the money was going directly for this project. They are done with the pavilion development now. It took them this time because they had to do a lot of their own funding for it. They had to raise some more of their own funding for the project. And the actual payment of the grant has to come to the city. And when we get a grant in, I have to have a budget appropriation to pass that money through to the Maritime Museum. So this is something from, it's either probably 2019, and it took that long to get the project finished. At the time, we didn't realize we would have to set up something in our budget for it. So now the money has to come to us, and we need an appropriation to pass it through. So what I've done is asked for the appropriation of the $101,739 and put it in the finance department's budget so that I can just pay it out of there over to the Maritime Museum.
With your indulgence, so the money was initially allocated, if I understand what you're saying, and then you're using this as a vehicle to allocate it to them?
Yes, the award was done several years ago.
Correct. Is it?
And at that time, I did not realize we were the grantee and would have to be the recipient of the funds. When we did the process, we had to sign the grant agreement, which we do in some other cases as well, in grants where we don't have to receive the money directly. In this case, because of the type of grant it is, we need to receive the money directly. They cannot send the funds to the Maritime Museum, even though they know they did the improvements. The Maritime is done, they've submitted all the reports to the state, but the state has to send the check to us.
Meaning the word pass-through.
Yes, we're a pass-through, and ideally, if we had realized this at the time, we probably would have set up a capital project. We wouldn't have been managing the project. Maritime Museum would have managed that project, and we would have just used the capital budget as a way to pass that money through.
And this is the vehicle that's acceptable.
Yes, this is just a way to get it done. We may have even gotten the cash in already from the state, and the Maritime Museum is waiting for
So
their,
the funding is secure.
yeah.
Colleagues? Alderwoman Finlayson? Did we hear her yet? Yes, Alderwoman. Oh. Thanks.
How does this impact out open space funding?
Good question.
So this is no impact to our open space money, and if it, I'm going to have to clarify this for you because I did not understand that it's open space money. I think it's the city playgrounds money, but I'm going to have to check on that for you. That's what it says on this form, but I'm not sure that's correct. It doesn't impact anything we have now, because if it was open space, we would have allocated it several years ago when we used it.
Well, I think that's what we're.
It's DNR, but I don't believe it's open space. I'll check on that for you.
Unless it was back in 2019, but, okay. Yeah, if you could send an email to my colleague Alderwoman Finlayson and all of us to let us know about that. But the funding is secure at this point. We just need to know what the impact is of the open space money.
It would have no impact on our currently available open space money.
Alderwoman Finlayson, what do you think about that?
She's typing. Typing.
Do you have questions in the
I
meantime?
told them she's typing.
No, it sounds like
Accounting.
the funding was appropriated to them or earmarked to them in 2019, and now that the project is finished, we're just
Yeah, closeout sort of thing.
closing it out. Correct.
It is not program open space money. It is the Community Parks and Playgrounds Program. Those monies have to come directly to a municipality. They cannot go to the group doing the improvements.
Alderwoman Finlayson, you satisfied with that?
So I will have this form altered before we come to the council meeting on Monday.
Yeah,
That'll
because
be
it's incorrectly
considered.
stated, the open
Yeah.
space, to confuse us.
Yeah, that's an error on our part.
Okay. Well, subject to that correction, I'll entertain a motion for a favorable recommendation for this. I'm not quite sure how to define it, allocation, sort of an accounting allocation.
I would call it a cleanup
Clean up on
appropriation.
aisle 3. Yep, got that. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to move this towards the council.
Do I have a
Favorable recommendation. Thank you.
Do I have a
Okay.
second?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor for a favorable recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Thank you. And third is another grant, SA 5-24, and it reads as an allocation of $1,500 from the Maryland Historical Trust for the fiscal year CLG, which I don't know what that is, Educational and Training Funds Grant Program. The grant was not included in the budget, but no matches if required. I had clarification on what CLG meant. Director Dickinson, are you able to speak to that?
Nope,
Oops.
this is a planning and zoning one, and we had hoped they'd have somebody here to speak to it, so do you know what CLG stands for?
I should know. I don't. Google it.
I am from the director, so if you guys want to postpone it.
Yeah.
So there's a director or a representative from planning and zoning.
Yeah. I motion, I know it's only from $1,500, but we'd like a representative from planning and zoning
Yeah,
to speak
that's
to
it.
this.
CLG stands for Certified Local Governments. It's a Maryland Historical Trust grant.
Yeah, I'm clueless. I'll accept a motion at this time to postpone action until, oops, we have, sorry. Alderman Finlayson has a question.
She asked, has anyone else signed off on it?
A good point. And I think looks like it's pretty new here. And I haven't signed off on it prematurely. Private joke there.
Insider between
Yeah,
us two.
so then in that,
She said postpone.
I'll accept that motion to postpone.
I'll second.
All in favor for postponement of this until we have the representative from planning and zoning, a little bit more explanation of it. Understanding that it's only for $1,500, but we just don't want to set a precedence on not having the adequate information.
Aye.
All in
I,
favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All righty. And our next one is, I believe, it will be spoken to by the presence of our police chief. It is SA 6-24. And it reads for the public, this supplemental allocation appropriates $8,700 from the State of Maryland Community Grant Program for the, quote, year-round community outreach program. The grant was not included in the fiscal year 2024 budget. Again, with your indulgence, I think that what the public wants to know is what this community, quote-unquote, community outreach program consists of, because there are other efforts in that vein. So, and if you just introduce yourself and speak to it, that'd be great.
Yes, Ed Jackson, Chief of Police for the City of Annapolis. Good morning.
Good morning.
Yes, ma'am. That grant
Barry?
has been reoccurring. It's centered around our youth projects under Captain Miguez. The money is generally used to take young children on fishing trips to museums. It helps fund the Character Counts program. Pretty much all of our youth initiatives, I think, is an amount of $8,000. It's from the governor's office on crime prevention and youth services. As far as I know, we've used that money since I've been chief for initiatives such as the ones I've just described.
Thank you.
I'll be
With my colleagues' indulgence, you have been police chief for several years, and you've made it clear about a paradigm shift, if you will, on community policing. And you have mentioned publicly that it's not all about fishing trips and all that. It's a lot more than that. And my concern is that taking this money and defining it just for fishing trips and excursions, if you will, may not be sufficient to accomplish the community policing that is your philosophy. Could you speak to that?
Yes, ma'am, I sure can. No, those are just examples, quick examples, but it's more comprehensive than that. The program is not just taking young kids fishing and fishing and those types of activities. But it's a kind of, at the core of it, is to bridge that gap between police and community. We want young people to know that we're here for them. We're not here just to arrest them, because you're right. I've said, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart, I've said time and time since I've been chief here that crime prevention is about understanding what drives crime in the first place. And without residents, young children as well as adults seeing us in other roles other than just enforcers, then, we'll never gain the public trust that's needed, that we must have in order to do our job effectively. So the examples I gave weren't limited to that. We Character Counselors are a very important initiative. We teach children about right and wrong, all the way up to middle school and high school. And then it's also used for events to help us with the truck that we take out into the various communities when we want to have anti-crime initiatives like Joe Hudson's, the wagon that he uses to provide hamburgers and hot dogs while we're out giving out anti-crime literature and working with communities. We've recently used them. We'll be using it in October for our Faith in Blue initiative down at Clay Street and Calvert Street. So it's not limited to those initial things that I talked about. It does go in very much in line with my community policing philosophy.
Thanks. Colleagues? Alderwoman Finlayson has a question. We're waiting for.
She said she used to.
Oh, did you have a question before that? Okay.
I'll second.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. See, we listen to you.
Yes, ma'am.
We
Thank
know your
you.
philosophy.
Yes, ma'am.
We want to
Thank
just make
you.
sure the money's going to that use. as
Yes,
you-
ma'am. I'll assure you that it will go to everything aligned with the community
With your
policing
philosophy.
philosophy. Yes,
Thank you
ma'am.
so much, sir.
Okay, thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you. Did we have a motion? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Okay, motion for a favorable recommendation. Alrighty. And we have next. We have a fund transfer, and that is for the public. It is it's our first fund transfer of fiscal year 2024. This budget revision transfers $50,000 of appropriations from Department of Public Works, admin contractual services to city manager special projects. This will allow funding. For the National Community Survey. I think Victoria, Assistant City Manager Buckland will.
Hi, Victoria Buckland, Assistant City Manager. So there are two pieces to this. The first is that some expenditures that DPW had been bearing were actually eligible under one of the City Doc grants. So there's no work that's being taken away or not being done on DPW. Instead, those expenditures are simply moving under a different funding mechanism. The timing related to the National Community Survey ended up being such that the encumbrance and payment for that was actually going to fall in the current fiscal year and not the last fiscal year. So this transfer simply allows us to keep on the same timeline, stay within the existing overall budget for the city by taking advantage of a funding opportunity that exists within DPW, and then transferring those funds over to the city manager's office to accommodate the survey costs.
Again, with my colleagues' indulgence, what was the scope of the money in DPW for City Doc that is now allocated to this? And why it would be nice if somebody from DPW was here, but.
So when we knew we needed some more funding for the survey, we started looking for options. And what we chose to do is we have a project manager, Eileen Fogarty, who's working on a regular basis for us to help pull together the City Doc project, do the community outreach, transmit information to the public on what's going on, that type of thing. And that cost is eligible for and really should be borne by the capital project itself. So that was budgeted in DPW's operating budget. Now we were going to move her expenses into the capital project. So this freed up that source in DPW to help pay for this survey.
Alderwoman Finlayson can speak to this, but I think she may have a question about this being her original amendment to the budget a couple of years ago? Is this the same community survey that she requested? Alderwoman,
So-
is this different?
Yes, I mean, it is, and it didn't get done a couple years ago when I think we reappropriated it for 22, for 23, and it did not get completed then.
Yeah.
And there was some funding set aside for it in this year's budget,
Let's give it
but
an
not enough to complete it. The survey price tag is higher than we thought. And then Vicki can speak more to the survey itself. And so this is going to finally get that done. This is going to encumber the funds for that project.
Okay, wait, let me just, I'm gonna be really dumb here. But a couple of years ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, we had an amendment for a community survey for 50,000. What happened to that? And is this in addition to that?
No, it's not in addition. So at the end of the fiscal year, because those are tax dollars, unspent money drops then into fund balance and becomes available for one-time use and things like that. So that money doesn't go away per se. It's not lost, but it does sort of change categories. And so is that fair?
The original amendment, the amendment that was originally done, and the second year it was put back into the budget, the source is the one-time reserve. That was always the source.
Yeah.
But we don't, at the end of the year, when we're trying to calculate what's left in the reserve, if we don't spend it, we just add that back to the reserve, so it's available again.
Understood.
Okay.
The surveys.
Alderwoman Finlayson?
Is this the survey for which we were given an opportunity to add questions?
Yep, that it is. And that opportunity is still open. So if you have particular ideas, I would be intensely curious to hear them.
She's typing. She's typing.
While she's typing, okay, what is the cost of this survey presently?
The final price ended up being $52,350.
No sense?
And no
I'm joking.
sense.
I'm joking.
Does the survey speak to community priorities?
Yes, in two different ways. The heart of the survey is a standard set of questions that are used across the country and will get benchmarked on those. That includes questions around quality of life and how you feel about various services, amenities. There are a lot of different questions that are there. In addition, part of what we included in what we purchased was the ability to add a full page of custom questions. And those can be whatever we're interested in. In addition, we also purchased 2 years of their Engage platform, which allows us to do unlimited surveying afterward. So this is why I have kind of a call for questions. I'm sorry, I can see you asking a question.
Questions with that.
So from a finance framework, there is, the way I understand it is that we had this amendment, thank you Alderwoman Finlayson, and I believe it was Alderman Arnett at the time, to have this survey. We didn't spend it, we put it in the general fund. Now we're reallocating it, the $50,000, it's now 50 something. Right. And so I think the question is really up to Alderwoman Finlayson, is this meeting her requirement at the time? And does it tie into the strategic plan?
Part of my goal has been to get to the end point and get results in time for the strategic plan retreat, so that can be part of what informs that discussion.
Her intent for the survey was to garner the information to determine what the priorities are from the residents. Mm-hmm. And so could we do a call for questions with that focus?
So
Has she read this?
That is part of what I am asking for. So I have asked the various department directors to suggest topic areas, made a request of the council members so that we can work with the folks at Polco to design
Could we extend the
good
deadline?
questions that get at some of those areas. So if there are particular interest areas, I very much like to hear where you would like to see some questions so that we can explore those areas with the folks at Polco.
She said, could we extend the deadline because it was her understanding that it was September 5th?
Yeah, so it would be, at some point that window is going to close. I've asked the department directors, because everyone's busy and in some sense it's a tough time of year. But I asked by midweek next week if folks could get questions to me, so that would be ideal. And if you want to simply discuss some of that to explore, I would be happy to set aside time.
She also said she's good with approving this, with the understanding that her colleagues will be given an opportunity to still add questions that speak to priorities.
I would appreciate an opportunity to meet and discuss.
I mean, I'm really relying on Alderwoman Finlayson for this because the genesis of it, if I was not mistaken, was the budget, 2 or 3 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, and, the perpetual questions on, do we join forces with the county for public safety, blah, 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 and Alderwoman Finlayson was, well, we really need to hear from the residents. What are their priorities as it relates to budget prioritization? So it's a big deal. And then also concurrent with that is how that morphs into our strategic plan. So there's a lot there going on, which, again, I'm out of my finance committee guardrails here, but I might suggest some kind of a city council work session where we can make sure that all of our respective wards and their respective constituents, are heard in this questionnaire.
Yeah, and like I said, part of what I'm, reinforced with the department directors as well is that this isn't our only opportunity, right? Because we also have access to that Engage platform, that allows us to do unlimited surveying over the next 2 years, asking whatever questions we want. So in some sense, part of the idea for this first go-around is to get at some of our biggest questions and to also then uncover potential areas where we may want to do follow-up surveying that might be more detailed.
Does this money cover that?
Yes, so what we had paid actually includes that availability over the next 2 years. So that's not an ongoing cost, like we're not going to see that same amount over the next couple of years. It's this payment that covers basically the next 3 years.
She said she moves to approve, recommend favorably.
We have a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
Do I have a second for a favorable recommendation? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
She said aye.
Aye. All right. Great. Okay, I think we're done almost here. I know we've been off, so Director Dickinson, do you have an update? Director Dickinson, do you have an update? That's last on the agenda.
Not specifically, no. The next meeting you'll be looking at the bond ordinance. The public hearing for that is on Monday. That's going to be a very important piece of legislation that you'll be considering. And just to let you know about staffing, we thought we had a candidate for a senior buyer, and he turned us down. So now it's back to square one for the senior buyer position. So we're not quite fully staffed yet.
I have one quick question on an update. Do we have any data from the Hillman Garage on how it's doing and any status on that, quote-unquote waterfall payment?
So on the financial side, no. I've been getting monthly progress reports on the construction, and I have those available, and I got my final report on that. And then recently, some of the reserves that were set aside for the construction process have been returned to us and deposited into the parking fund. And then the first waterfall payment is due to us, I think it's in January, so we won't see that till January.
Okay.
And I haven't yet asked to see how it's doing from a financial perspective. Is it meeting expectations? But we'll have a better picture of that after there's a cutoff date, I think, every 6 months.
Yeah.
The first 6-month cutoff is in December, and so we should get the first waterfall in January.
My point there is to have, no surprises in January, if you will. So if there were any.
So I'll have to find out how much I am able to get, because the money's being processed by somebody else. So
Got it.
I'll have to ask them what they can provide to me on what they've collected to date.
Okay. Are there any other questions for Director Dickinson? Alderman O'Neill? I see that
Yes.
look on your face.
Yes, I do have a quick question. You talked a little bit about staffing, and I know that you were holding off on 2 of the staff members in hiring. Correct? You were holding off on 2 new hires until space was.
So yes, in the budget process in the last couple of years, I was approved a couple new positions. One was a grant administrator. Right now, we're putting together an SOP citywide on grant administration, so we're going to do that before we try to describe and provide a position description for the grant administrator and give it a pay grade and go through that process with civil service. So that's a little bit down the road. And also, I have a senior accountant for accounts receivable tracking, but that's a position that's open that I was awarded this last budget process. That is the one that I can't really hire until I figure out where I'm going to put him, because we are literally out of desk space now. So we have to either do something in-house and split offices or find some other space for that.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, I have 2 more questions. You spoke to during the budget review your concern about monitoring the short-term rentals as far as identifying them and receiving the respective taxes. Have we progressed on that or assigned that to a particular person in the finance department to ensure that we're optimizing the revenue?
So nothing has moved forward on the pursuit of additional funding. We've had a couple of issues, the site's not working well for the customers. So daily, my assistant director is dealing with people calling and saying, I can't do this at the site, how do I do this, how do I do this? And we have a plan to switch it all over into the EnerGov system, but that system's not fully operational yet. So in the meantime, we had an increase. The county increased its rate from 7% to 8%. It took effect on July 1st. So now we've been working with those paying to make sure they're paying the 8%. So there have been other hurdles that we've had to overcome. And yes, Ms. Donnelly, my assistant director, is heading that up, but it's a lot to put on her plate. The senior accountant that I had that I want to fill for accounts receivable, that would be one of the things, because the occupancy taxes are money due to us, and that would give us a position of someone in particular to follow up on that.
Yeah, thank you for understanding the priority of that. I wish we could make some motion on really, supporting that effort. I'm not sure what that would be titled, but we really support that effort, for the record. If you reflect that in the minutes, that we do. We reflect this effort to optimize that. Go ahead.
I have one more thing. I just wanted to say thank you to you and your departments. I had a constituent who had a billing issue where a check was never received. He had a 1.5 week frustrated experience, but in reaching out, it was fixed within 24 hours, and he actually exclaimed how wonderful it was to work with your staff. So thank you.
That's good to hear. We don't always get that kind of feedback. I mean, it's very frustrating to know you've sent something and it hasn't been received or hasn't been posted or whatever the situation is. It is very frustrating.
I apologize, it's been a long month off, so I have one last question is, are you able to speak of the status of the reclassification study on positions, or would that be Ms. Hopkins? Or
The study is continuing to move along. There are a couple of different phases to it, and looking at leadership, and then looking at sort of everyone else in some sense. Those are in different places, but they are ongoing. There is some legislation that is on the agenda for Monday that is related to that. But the timeline for that continues to be somewhat aggressive. They actually just had a sort of a town hall for staff just a couple of days ago, and there's one more coming up. So there's been a considerable amount of outreach, and they've done quite a lot of work. But it's not done, right? That work is continuing.
yeah, my colleague told me that there was one item on the agenda for this Monday night. So, all right, thank you so much. Aren't you glad to have us back? With that, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I will have to second. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye.